The morning light filtered softly through the kitchen window, painting the countertops in shades of gold. Claire Carson stood by the sink, her hands resting on the edge, watching the steam rise from her untouched cup of coffee. From the outside, anyone would have said she had a perfect life, a beautiful home in a quiet Seattle suburb, a stable marriage, a husband with a good job. But the silence in that house had grown heavier with every passing year. Liam Carson came down the stairs, tie half done, his phone already in hand. He was always in a rush these days, another meeting, another client call, another excuse. "Morning," Claire said softly, almost afraid her voice would startle him. "Hey," he murmured without looking up. His eyes were locked on his screen, scrolling, typing, frowning. The moment passed like so many others, brief, mechanical, empty. Claire tried to remind herself that this was just how marriages evolved, comfort over passion, routine over surprise. But deep down, she knew it wasn't comfort she felt. It was distance. Invisible, growing, and cold. The breakfast she prepared went mostly untouched. Liam took one sip of his coffee and muttered something about being late. "You'll be home for dinner?" she asked, her voice light but hopeful. He paused only for a second before saying, "I'll try. Don't wait up if I'm late." When the front door closed, the silence returned like an old companion. Claire sat at the table for a long time, tracing circles on the wooden surface with her fingertip. She thought about how it used to be, how Liam used to pull her into his arms before work, kiss her on the forehead, and whisper, "See you soon, sweetheart." Now, the only trace of him was the faint smell of his cologne fading in the air. She tried to fill the hours with small things, cleaning, painting, planning her next lesson for her art students. But nothing quite silenced the emptiness. Her students' laughter at school brought brief joy, but even that faded when she came home to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the echo of her own footsteps. That evening, Claire reheated the dinner she'd made, chicken with rosemary and lemon, his favorite, just in case. The clock ticked past 8, then 9. By 10, she gave up and packed the food away. She knew he wouldn't come home early. He hadn't in months. When Liam finally walked in after 11, his shirt slightly wrinkled and his eyes tired, Claire forced a small smile. "You already ate?" she asked gently. "Yeah, grabbed something with the team," he said, loosening his tie. "Don't wait up next time, okay?" There was no warmth in his tone, no apology. Only exhaustion, or maybe detachment. Claire nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She watched him disappear upstairs, phone still in hand, his face illuminated by the pale glow of the screen. It was as if his world existed entirely in that device, full of urgency, attention, and life, everything their marriage had lost. She cleaned the table again, though it was already spotless. Her reflection in the kitchen window caught her off guard. She barely recognized the woman staring back, eyes tired, smile uncertain, the kind of woman who used to believe love could fix anything. Now she wasn't so sure. Before going to bed, Claire passed by Liam's office. The door was ajar, and she could hear the soft tapping of keys. She lingered for a moment, wanting to say something, anything, that might bridge the space between them. But her voice stayed trapped in her chest. Instead, she whispered a quiet, "Good night," he probably didn't hear, and walked away. Upstairs, as she lay in bed alone, she stared at the ceiling and tried to remember the last time they truly talked, not about bills, not about work, but about them. The answer didn't come. Somewhere between the ticking of the clock and the hum of the city outside, Claire realized something simple yet painful. It wasn't anger or betrayal that hurt the most. It was indifference. The slow, quiet kind that didn't break you all at once, it just hollowed you out, day by day, until there was nothing left but habit and silence. And that night, surrounded by the life she had built, Claire Carson felt more alone than she had ever been. It was Friday night, the kind of evening Claire used to look forward to, take out on the couch, a movie, maybe a glass of wine. But lately, Fridays had become just another night she spent waiting. That morning, she'd texted Liam, "Dinner tonight?" "Just us," and he'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That was all. No words, no warmth. Still, she'd spent the afternoon preparing anyway, a small dinner, candles on the table, soft jazz playing through the house. She wanted, for once, to feel like a couple again. By 7, the food was ready. By 8, it was cold. Claire sat at the table, glancing at the clock every few minutes, convincing herself that traffic was just bad, that he'd walk through the door any second. At 8:30, her phone buzzed. Sorry. Stuck at work. Don't wait up. Her stomach sank. She typed and deleted 3 different replies before settling on, okay. Be safe. She stared at the screen a moment longer before locking it and setting it face down. The candles flickered in front of her, burning for no one. At 9, she turned off the music. At 10, she poured herself a glass of wine, not because she wanted to, but because it filled the silence. She told herself she wasn't angry, just disappointed. But when she finally heard the garage door open close to midnight, her heart still jumped. Liam stepped in, the smell of alcohol and something floral clinging to his shirt. Hey, he said, like nothing was wrong. You're late, Claire answered softly. Yeah, the client meeting ran over, he replied, avoiding her eyes. He dropped his briefcase by the door, slipped out of his shoes, and walked past her toward the kitchen. Claire noticed his loosened tie, the faint lipstick mark near his collar. It might have been the light, or maybe it wasn't. Her throat tightened, but she said nothing. You could have texted, she murmured. I did. Hours ago. He exhaled, annoyed. Claire, I'm exhausted. Can we not do this tonight? The words cut deeper than he probably intended. Do what? She asked quietly. Talk? He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a bottle of water, mumbled, "Good night," and headed upstairs. Claire stood there for a long time, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence he left behind. She felt something inside her shift, not anger, but the realization that this wasn't just a rough patch. Something deeper was breaking. Later that night, she went to the laundry room to throw in a load of clothes. When she reached for Liam's pants pocket, his phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. She froze. Last night was amazing. You make me forget everything. Her chest went cold. The sender's name, Rachel M. She didn't know any Rachel M. She didn't want to. Claire's fingers trembled. She shouldn't look, she knew that, but her curiosity overpowered her restraint. She opened the message thread. Dozens of texts. Photos. Jokes. Compliments. And there it was again, that same easy, attentive tone he'd once used with her. For a few seconds, the world went completely quiet. She didn't scream, didn't throw the phone. She just stood there, heart pounding, 1,000 memories flashing behind her eyes, every dinner she ate alone, every "I'm working late," every night she fell asleep waiting. When Liam came down later, half asleep, asking if she was coming to bed, she simply handed him the phone. His eyes flicked from the screen to her face, and for the first time, she saw fear there. It's not what it looks like, he said too quickly. Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. Then tell me what it is. He hesitated, too long. Claire didn't cry. She just turned and walked out of the room, up the stairs, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Behind her, Liam's excuses blurred into the background, words without meaning, like static on a dead radio. In their bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. The framed photo of their wedding day hung there, 2 people smiling, full of hope, holding hands like they'd never let go. Now, all she could see was the space between them. The cracks had been there all along, she just hadn't wanted to see. And for the first time in years, Claire Carson realized that love wasn't dying quietly. It was already gone. The next morning, the house was unbearably quiet. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, warm and gentle, as if mocking the coldness between them. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her coffee untouched again. She didn't sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that text. Last night was amazing. The words replayed like a cruel melody in her mind. Liam came downstairs around 8, dressed neatly, freshly shaven, acting like nothing had happened. His calmness made her stomach twist. "Morning," he said, voice cautious but casual. "Morning," she echoed. For a while, neither spoke. The sound of the coffee machine filled the silence. Claire finally broke it. "Who's Rachel?" Liam froze for half a second, then forced a laugh, the kind people use when they're lying. "She's a co-worker. We were discussing a project late last night. You saw that message out of context. You make me forget everything. Is that work talk now?" Claire's tone was steady, almost too calm. Liam sighed. "Claire, you're reading too much into it. She's just a friend. We've been under pressure lately, things get friendly sometimes, that's all." "Friendly," she repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. He rubbed his temples, pretending to be patient. "You know how people joke around when they're stressed." It didn't mean anything. Claire looked at him, really looked. The way he avoided eye contact, the way his hand gripped the edge of the counter. The little tells she'd learned after years of marriage. He was lying. And what hurt most wasn't the lie itself, it was how effortlessly he told it. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to demand the truth. But instead, she simply said, "Okay." Liam blinked, caught off guard. "Okay?" "Yes," she said. "If you say it's nothing, I'll believe you." Her words were soft, but her heart wasn't. She knew she wasn't believing him, she was giving him a chance to come clean. A chance he didn't take. He kissed her forehead, a gesture that used to mean affection, now it felt like apology, and left for work. The moment the door closed, Claire's mask cracked. She let out a shaky breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She sat there for a long time, staring at her reflection in the coffee's surface. The woman looking back at her didn't seem naive, just tired. Tired of excuses. Tired of forgiving before being asked. Later that day, she drove to the art supply store, needing something, anything, to distract herself. As she wandered through the aisles, her phone buzzed. A message from Liam. "Big day at work. Don't wait up." She typed a reply, "Okay. Be safe." The same words she'd used 100 times before. But this time, they felt hollow. Empty. She hit send anyway. When she returned home, the house was dark again. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat at her easel, and stared at the blank canvas. She wanted to paint something that hurt, something raw and ugly, like the truth sitting heavy in her chest. Brush in hand, she made the first stroke, deep red, harsh and uneven. It bled across the white space like a wound. She painted until her hand ached, until tears blurred her vision. When she finally stopped, she looked at the canvas, a mess of color and chaos, and whispered, "That's what love looks like when it starts to die." Hours later, she walked past Liam's office. The lights were off, but the faint glow from his laptop screen told her he'd been there earlier. She hesitated before touching his desk. His phone lay there, silent, face down, the same way hers had been when she received that message. She picked it up, stared at it for a few seconds, then set it back down. She didn't need to look anymore. The truth wasn't in his phone, it was in his behavior. Upstairs, she opened her journal, the one she used to write lesson plans and random thoughts. On the first blank page, she wrote, "I think he's lying. But I don't feel angry. Just empty. Maybe love doesn't disappear. Maybe it just gets buried under all the things we stop saying." She closed the book, turned off the light, and sat in the dark for a while. Outside, rain began to fall softly against the window, Seattle rain, quiet but endless. Claire listened to it and wondered if it was trying to tell her something, that even the strongest storms start with small cracks in the sky. And as she drifted off to sleep, alone again, she realized she wasn't afraid of losing Liam anymore. She was afraid of losing herself while trying to keep him. Point 1. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days straight. Seattle was gray and quiet, and so was Claire. She moved through her days like someone walking underwater, slow, muted, breathless. Her students had noticed her distant smile, her distracted eyes, but she hid it well. Teachers are good at pretending everything's fine. On Thursday afternoon, as she was cleaning brushes in her classroom, a familiar voice broke through the hum of rain. Still using turpentine instead of mineral spirits? Some habits never die. Claire turned, startled, and there he was. Ethan Moore. He looked almost exactly as she remembered from college, maybe a little older, a little scruffier, but with the same gentle energy that made people feel seen. His camera hung around his neck, rain droplets glistening on his jacket. "Ethan," she said, a smile creeping onto her face before she could stop it. "Hey, Claire," he said, grinning. "Heard there was an art exhibit here. Didn't know the curator was an old friend." She laughed, really laughed, for what felt like the first time in months. It was strange, how easy it felt to fall back into a rhythm that used to be so natural. They talked for a while, about work, life, art, Seattle weather. She learned he'd left New York 2 years ago to freelance as a photographer, chasing stories instead of money. Freedom over comfort, he called it. When he asked if she still painted, Claire hesitated. "Sometimes," she said. "Not like before." "You should," he said gently. "You always had that thing, like you painted what people were afraid to feel." His words hit deeper than he realized. Before leaving, Ethan handed her a small card, the invitation to his upcoming photo exhibition downtown. "You should come," he said. "It's about finding light in places that forgot it existed." When he left, the classrooms suddenly felt brighter. That evening, Claire sat in her car outside her house, watching the light in Liam's office flicker through the blinds. He was home early for once, but instead of feeling comfort, she felt uneasy. She sat there for a long minute, gripping the steering wheel, before finally going inside. "Hey," she greeted softly. "Hey," he replied without looking up from his laptop. She took off her coat, hesitated, then said, "I ran into an old friend today." "Ethan Moore, remember him? From college?" Liam's typing paused. "The photographer?" "Yeah." He didn't look up. "Didn't know you two still talked." "We didn't. It was a coincidence." He nodded, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Right." She noticed it, that small flicker of jealousy, sharp and immediate. It almost made her laugh, considering. "Don't worry," she said quietly. "We just caught up." "I'm not worried," he replied, a little too quickly. Dinner passed mostly in silence. Liam was polite, but distracted, still glued to his phone. At one point, it buzzed, and he turned the screen away before answering. Claire didn't need to ask who it was. She simply smiled faintly, the kind of smile that said, "I already know." Saturday came, and Claire found herself at Ethan's exhibition downtown. The space was small but warm, filled with black and white photographs of strangers, a woman staring out a train window, a boy laughing under streetlight rain, an old couple holding hands on a park bench. Each image felt alive, like it had a heartbeat. Ethan found her near a photo of a lonely pier stretching into fog. "Do you like it?" he asked. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "There's so much sadness in it, but it's honest." He smiled. "That's the point." They walked together through the gallery, talking about art, about loss, about the parts of themselves they'd both hidden from the world. For the first time in a long time, Claire felt understood, not pitted, not judged. When she got home that night, Liam was already asleep on the couch, TV still on. She looked at him, at the man she once thought she'd grow old with, and felt something shift inside her. Not hatred. Not love. Just detachment. She went upstairs quietly, changed into her pajamas, and sat on the bed. Her mind kept drifting back to Ethan's words, finding light in places that forgot it existed. She looked out the window. The rain had finally stopped. For the first time in months, she could see the faint outline of stars above the city, small, distant, but still shining. And Claire wondered if maybe, just maybe, she could start to shine again too. The day felt strangely calm, the kind of deceptive quiet that comes right before a storm. Adam sat in the living room, sunlight slanting through the blinds, scattering thin lines across the carpet. He had taken the day off, claiming exhaustion. In truth, he just didn't want to face another day pretending everything was fine. Evelyn was in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared lunch. Her voice carried a lightness that had been missing for months, and for a fleeting second, Adam almost felt comforted by it. But then his phone buzzed on the coffee table, not his, actually, hers. She had left it there while chopping vegetables, the screen lighting up with a preview of a message. At first, he didn't mean to look. He'd promised himself he wouldn't. He had been trying, really trying, to rebuild trust, to be a better husband. But the preview wouldn't stop flashing. I can't stop thinking about last night. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. His first instinct was denial. It can't be what it looks like. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's about the project she mentioned. But his heart was already hammering too fast for rational thoughts. Before he could stop himself, he picked up the phone, unlocked it, she hadn't even changed her passcode, and opened the message thread. It was from Ethan. The same Ethan who had become a close friend during the months Adam was pulling away. The one who had helped her fix her car when Adam forgot. The one she had mentioned casually, assuring him there was nothing more. And maybe there hadn't been. Not at first. But the thread told a story that was impossible to misread, warmth that had grown into tenderness, late-night confessions, and finally, something that crossed the line. Adam felt the air leave his lungs. His hands trembled as he scrolled, each message slicing through him like glass. He saw her vulnerability, her longing, her guilt, all the emotions she used to share with him. And now, they belonged to someone else. Adam? Her voice came from the kitchen. He froze. Can you hand me the salt? He didn't respond. His throat burned. The phone screen dimmed, reflecting his own face, pale, distant, lost. When Evelyn stepped into the room and saw what he was holding, her smile faltered instantly. Adam, she whispered, her tone breaking like thin glass. Please. Let me explain. Explain what? His voice was calm, too calm. That you replaced me? That while I was trying to fix this marriage, you were. He stopped himself before the words turned venomous. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't like that. I was lonely. You pushed me away for so long, I know I failed you, he interrupted, voice shaking now. I know I wasn't there when you needed me. But this? He held up the phone. This isn't fixing things, Evelyn. This is giving up on us. Silence settled between them, thick and unbearable. The kind of silence that screamed more than words ever could. Evelyn's tears fell, silent and endless. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear I didn't. But for once, someone actually listened to me. He made me feel seen. Her confession shattered what was left of his pride. Adam wanted to scream, to throw something, to run. But instead, he sat down, hands covering his face, and let out a hollow laugh. You think I don't understand that? I've been invisible too, Evelyn. Just in a different way. Neither of them moved for a long time. The only sound was the slow, rhythmic dripping of the faucet, an accidental, cruel metronome marking the end of something fragile. When he finally stood, he didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He just looked at her, really looked, and said quietly, we both broke this. Maybe you more this time. Maybe me before. But I don't know if there's anything left to fix. Evelyn reached out a trembling hand, but he stepped back. The sunlight through the blinds had shifted by now, the lines across the carpet fading into shadow, as if even the day itself wanted to look away. That night, the house was silent, not peaceful, but hollow. Evelyn sat at the edge of the bed, eyes swollen from crying, while Adam stood by the window, staring into the dark suburban street. The glow from a street lamp cut across his face, making the distance between them feel like miles instead of a few feet. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The only sound was the faint ticking of the wall clock, marking every second that slipped further out of their reach. Finally, Evelyn broke the silence. "Adam, please say something." He turned his head slightly, his voice low, tired. "I don't know what to say, Evelyn. Every time I try to find the right words, they just disappear." She took a small step forward. "It wasn't planned. I never meant for any of this to happen." He let out a breath, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh. "That's what everyone says before they destroy something that mattered." Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away. "Do you think I don't hate myself for it? You think I'm proud of this? I've spent months feeling like a ghost in my own marriage. I tried to talk to you, Adam, but you shut me out." He flinched, because she was right. There had been a time when he stopped listening, when work, exhaustion, and his own guilt had consumed him. He had told himself that ignoring the cracks would make them disappear. Instead, they had spread, until someone else had stepped into the space he left empty. "I know," he said quietly. "I shut down. I thought if I worked harder, if I provided more, it would somehow make up for everything I wasn't giving you. But all I did was disappear." Evelyn wiped her face, her voice trembling. "I should have waited for you to come back. I should have fought harder. But I was so tired of being alone." He sat down in the armchair across from her, elbows on his knees. "You could have told me before it got this far." "I tried," she whispered. "But every time, you were somewhere else, in your head, in your work, in your guilt." Ethan just listened. The name made him close his eyes, as if hearing it caused physical pain. When he opened them again, they were glassy but steady. "Do you love him?" She froze. The question hung in the air like a blade. "No," she said after a long pause. "I loved what he made me feel. But I don't love him." "Then what do you feel for me?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "I don't know anymore." It was the most honest thing she had said all night, and it broke him more than the affair itself. Because uncertainty was worse than betrayal. It meant there was no clear enemy, no easy way to hate, no sharp edge to hold on to. Only emptiness. Adam stood and reached for his suitcase in the closet. Evelyn's breath caught. "What are you doing?" "I need to go," he said quietly. "Just for a while. I need to think, away from this house, away from everything." She rose quickly, panic flashing in her eyes. "Please, don't leave. We can talk, we can fix this." He shook his head. "I can't fix anything when I can barely breathe in this room." He zipped the suitcase, the sound slicing through the tension. At the door, he paused, turning to look at her one last time. "You're right. We both let this die long before he showed up. I just didn't realize how far gone it was." Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Where will you go?" "I don't know," he said. "Maybe that's the point." He left without slamming the door, without drama, just quiet finality. Evelyn collapsed onto the bed, clutching the pillow he used every night, her sobs muffled against it. Outside, the street was empty, the night heavy with unspoken words. Adam walked to his car, the cold air biting at his skin. He didn't start the engine right away. He sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel, trying to find the strength to drive away from the life he had built, and the woman he still loved, even now. The apartment Adam found was small, a one-bedroom place on the outskirts of town, with peeling paint and a view of the parking lot instead of the skyline. It wasn't much, but it was quiet. Too quiet. The first night, he couldn't sleep. Every sound, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant bark of a dog, felt foreign. The bed was cold, the air heavy. He missed the way Evelyn used to shift in her sleep, the faint sound of her breathing, even the warmth of her hand brushing against his arm in the middle of the night. Now, there was nothing but the hollow rhythm of his own heartbeat. He told himself he needed this. Space. Time. A chance to think without drowning in the echo of arguments and apologies. But as the days passed, silence became unbearable. It wasn't peace. It was punishment. Work didn't help. He'd sit at his desk, staring at the same spreadsheet for hours, unable to focus. His colleagues noticed his distance, but no one asked, they all knew better than to pry. At lunch, he'd scroll through his phone, hovering over Evelyn's contact name, thumb trembling before he locked the screen again. A week later, she texted him for the first time since he left. "Evelyn, are you okay?" Adam, trying to be. There was a long pause before she replied. "Evelyn, I miss you." He didn't respond. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But what could he say? That he missed her too? That despite everything, she was still the first thought in his head every morning? That every night, he imagined walking back through the door and pretending none of it had happened? Instead, he left her message unanswered. Because missing her didn't mean he could trust her again. That night, he poured himself a drink, the third one, and sat by the window, staring at the glow of the city in the distance. His reflection looked like a stranger, eyes sunken, beard growing uneven, shoulders slumped. He wondered when he had become this version of himself, the man who had once been confident, loving, hopeful, now reduced to quiet bitterness and regret. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. He froze, heart pounding. Nobody knew he was here, except one person. He opened the door, and there she was. Evelyn. She stood in the hallway, her eyes red from crying, a thin sweater wrapped tightly around her. "I didn't know where else to go," she said softly. Adam stared at her, torn between the instinct to pull her into his arms and the urge to shut the door. "You shouldn't be here." "I know," she whispered. "But I needed to see you. Just once." He didn't move. "Why? To apologize again?" Her eyes shimmered. "No. To tell you that I let him go. Ethan. I ended it the night you left." He exhaled, but the pain didn't fade. "You think that fixes it?" "No," she said. "But it's a start. I realized he wasn't who I wanted. It was never really about him. It was about us, or what was left of us." Adam leaned against the doorframe, exhaustion in every breath. "You think I can just forget the image of you with someone else? That I can walk back into that house and pretend we're fine?" "I don't expect that," she said quietly. "I just need you to know that I'm trying. Even if it's too late." The words hung between them, fragile and trembling. "Finally," he said, "you broke something I don't know how to fix." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "So did you," she whispered. "We both did." He closed his eyes, the weight of her truth pressing down on him. When he opened them again, she was still standing there, waiting, not for forgiveness, but for acknowledgement. He took a small step closer. Not enough to close the distance, but enough to show that maybe, just maybe, the door wasn't locked forever. "Go home, Evelyn," he said softly. "Give me time." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I'll wait." When she left, Adam stood there long after the elevator doors closed, the silence heavier than before, but this time, there was something faint beneath it. Not peace. Not hope. Just the smallest flicker of possibility. And somehow, that was enough to keep him breathing through the night. The days after Evelyn's visit were strange, quieter, but no longer numb. Adam found himself caught between anger and longing, swinging back and forth like a pendulum that refused to rest. He went to work, came home, cooked simple meals, and sat in silence. But every so often, he caught himself wondering what she was doing, whether she still cried at night, whether she still wore her wedding ring. She did. Across town, Evelyn was trying to piece her life together one small act at a time. She deleted Ethan's number, blocked him on everything, and avoided the cafe where they used to meet. The first few days, she felt like she was suffocating. The guilt was constant, a physical ache in her chest. But guilt alone wasn't enough to make things right. So she started going to therapy, something she had been afraid to suggest when she and Adam were still together. Her therapist, an older woman named Marjorie, listened quietly as Evelyn confessed everything, the affair, the loneliness, the heartbreak. When Evelyn finished, voice shaking, Marjorie simply said, "You're not evil. You're human. But if you want to heal, you'll have to learn how to sit with what you did, not run from it." Evelyn nodded, even though the words stung. For the first time, she wasn't looking for excuses. She was looking for understanding. Meanwhile, Adam spent his evenings at the gym, trying to exhaust his thoughts into silence. But no matter how much he ran, Evelyn's face always followed him. One night, he returned to his apartment to find an envelope slipped under the door. His name, written in her handwriting. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a letter, simple, handwritten, shaky. Adam. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I'm trying to be someone better, not for you, but because I can't live with the version of myself who hurt you. You were right. We both broke this, but I broke it worse. I let pain turn me into someone I never wanted to be. I don't expect you to come back, but I'll spend however long it takes proving I've changed. Evelyn. He read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it on the nightstand. He didn't cry. He didn't get angry. He just felt tired. But beneath the exhaustion was something else, a quiet respect for her honesty. A few days later, he found himself driving toward their old neighborhood without meaning to. He parked near the park they used to walk through on Sunday mornings. Families were out, kids running through fallen leaves, couples holding hands. For the first time in weeks, Adam smiled, a small, sad smile. He texted her that night. "Adam, got your letter." There was a pause before her reply came. "Evelyn, I wasn't sure if I should send it." "Adam, I'm glad you did." They didn't say anything else after that. But for the first time, the silence between them didn't feel like an ending. It felt like the quiet before a possible beginning. In the following weeks, their conversations became more frequent, small, cautious exchanges. She'd send photos of the garden she was tending again. He'd reply with updates about work. Nothing intimate, nothing heavy. Just gentle, fragile attempts to rebuild a bridge that had almost burned completely. One evening, she wrote, "Evelyn, I still make dinner for two sometimes. Habit, I guess. Adam, maybe one day I'll take that extra plate." When she saw the message, Evelyn smiled through her tears. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. But it was a flicker of something that felt like hope, not the naive kind that ignores the past, but the kind that grows from acknowledging the worst parts of it. Both of them knew there was still a long road ahead, full of doubt, fear, and wounds that might never fully heal. But for the first time since everything fell apart, they were moving, not backward, not away, but maybe, just maybe, towards something new. 2 months passed before they saw each other again. The air had shifted with autumn, crisp, brittle, and carrying that faint smell of change. Adam had agreed to meet Evelyn for coffee after weeks of cautious texting. It wasn't a reconciliation, he reminded himself. Just a conversation. He arrived first, sitting at a corner table of the small cafe they used to visit years ago. He remembered how she used to order vanilla lattes and steal sips from his black coffee, making a face every time because it was too bitter. The memory stung, sweet and painful all at once. When she walked in, he almost didn't recognize her at first. She looked different. Not in the way that time changes a person, but in the way grief and self-reflection sculpt someone into something softer, humbler. Her hair was tied back, her clothes simple. No makeup. Just Evelyn, raw, real, and trembling slightly when her eyes met his. "Hi," she said, voice quiet but steady. "Hey," he replied. For a moment, neither knew what to do. Then she gestured toward the chair across from him. "May I?" He nodded. She sat down, clutching her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "It's good to see you," she said after a while. He gave a small smile. "You too." The silence that followed wasn't hostile, just fragile. They both danced carefully around it, afraid to move too quickly. Finally, Evelyn broke it. "I've been going to therapy," she said. "Still am, actually." He nodded. "That's good." She hesitated. "It's helped. Not just with what happened, but with understanding why I let it happen." She looked down, her voice trembling slightly. "I realized I was chasing validation because I didn't know how to love myself anymore. And that wasn't your fault. It was mine." Adam studied her face, searching for insincerity, but found none. "I appreciate you saying that." She looked up. "How about you? How have you been?" He shrugged. "Trying to make sense of things. Some days I do. Most days, I don't. I keep thinking about all the ways I failed too." Her eyes softened. "You didn't fail alone, Adam. We both did." The words landed gently, without blame, like truth spoken from a scar, not a wound. He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Do you ever think we could start over?" She blinked, surprised. "Start over?" He nodded. "Not as husband and wife." "Not yet. Just two people who still care." Evelyn looked at him for a long moment, tears glistening at the corners of her eyes. "I'd like that." They sat in silence again, but this time it felt different, warm, familiar. When the waiter came by, Adam ordered another round of coffee. She smiled faintly at that, and for a brief second, he saw the woman he'd fallen in love with years ago, the one who used to laugh with her whole face. As the afternoon light dimmed, Evelyn said softly, "I don't expect you to forget. I know I broke something in you." He looked at her, his gaze steady. "You did. But maybe what's left can still be built into something stronger." Her breath caught. "You really think that's possible?" He gave a small, tired smile. "I don't know. But I'd like to find out." When they finally stood to leave, they lingered outside the cafe. The air was cold, the sunset staining the sky orange and gold. Evelyn hugged herself, shivering slightly. Without thinking, Adam took off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. It was such a small gesture, but it meant everything. She looked up at him, her eyes soft and full of something fragile and real. "Thank you." He nodded. "Get home safe." As she walked away, Adam stood there, watching her until she disappeared down the street. For the first time in a long while, the ache in his chest wasn't unbearable. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about erasing the past. Maybe it was about choosing, every day, to move forward, even if it hurt. And as he turned to leave, he realized that somewhere in the quiet space between heartbreak and healing, something had started to breathe again. The weeks following their coffee meeting felt different, lighter, somehow, though neither of them could fully explain why. There were no promises made, no labels attached. Just two people trying to relearn how to exist in the same world without the weight of resentment crushing them. At first, they kept things simple. Texts about work, weather, and mundane things that once seemed meaningless but now carried quiet significance. Evelyn would send pictures of the stray cat that started sleeping on her porch. Adam would reply with dry humor, teasing her for adopting every lonely creature in town. It wasn't much. But it was something. One Saturday afternoon, Evelyn invited him to the park, the same one they used to visit years ago. He hesitated before agreeing, afraid of what it might stir up. But when he saw her waiting by the pond, feeding ducks like she always used to, he felt a small, unexpected warmth rise in his chest. "Didn't think you'd actually come," she said with a faint smile. "Didn't think I would either," he admitted. They walked along the path in slow, hesitant steps, the crunch of leaves beneath their shoes filling the pauses between words. It wasn't awkward, it was gentle. They were learning the rhythm of each other again, like a song they once knew by heart but had forgotten the lyrics to. At one point, Evelyn stopped to watch the water ripple in the wind. "I used to come here alone," she said quietly. "Even before everything happened. I think I was already lonely, I just didn't want to admit it." Adam looked at her, the honesty in her tone cutting deeper than anger ever could. "You could have told me," he said softly. "I tried," she whispered. "You just weren't listening back then." He nodded. "I know." The admission hung there, simple, raw, without defense. And somehow, it brought them closer than all their apologies had before. They spent the rest of the afternoon walking, talking about nothing and everything, music, books, old friends, how weirdly expensive coffee had become. There were still unspoken things between them, heavy memories that neither dared to touch yet. But for the first time, the conversation didn't end in pain. When Adam dropped her off that evening, she hesitated before getting out of the car. "Thank you," she said. "For today." He smiled faintly. "It was good seeing you happy." She looked down, her fingers tightening on the seatbelt. "I'm trying to be. I want to be someone better, even if you never come back." He swallowed hard, something in her words cutting through his calm. "Evelyn, this isn't about coming back. It's about figuring out if we can still be us in some way, whatever that means now." She nodded, blinking back tears. "Then I'll take that." That night, Adam sat in his apartment and thought about how strange forgiveness really was. It wasn't a single decision. It was 1,000 small ones, every text, every conversation, every time he chose not to let bitterness speak for him. He opened his laptop and typed a message that had been sitting in his drafts for weeks. "Adam, I don't know where this ends, Evelyn. But I want to keep trying." Slowly. He hovered over the send button for a long time before pressing it. A few minutes later, the reply came. "Evelyn, so do I." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. For the first time in months, he didn't feel like he was drowning. Instead, he felt like he was finally learning to breathe again, not the sharp, desperate gasps of survival, but the deep, steady kind that came with peace. Outside, rain began to fall, soft and rhythmic against the window. It reminded him of the nights they used to lie awake, listening to storms together, silent, content, connected without words. Maybe they would never be the same. Maybe that was okay. Because sometimes, the most beautiful kind of love wasn't the one that stayed perfect, it was the one that survived being broken. The rain came that night, hard and relentless, as if the sky itself had chosen to mourn with them. Elias stood outside their old house, drenched, watching the faint glow of the living room through the window. Inside, Mara sat with her parents, her hands clasped together, her eyes tired but calm, the same eyes that once looked at him like he was her entire world. He had come uninvited. The restraining order had expired, but that didn't mean he was welcome. Still, he had to try, one last time. He had spent months in therapy, months learning to listen, to understand how his insecurities and jealousy had corroded everything they built. He wasn't there to beg anymore, he was there to take responsibility. When Mara opened the door, the sound of rain filled the silence between them. She didn't look surprised. "Elias," she said, softly, as if saying his name still carried a trace of pain. "I just wanted to see you," he said, his voice trembling. "Not to fix things. I know I can't. I just needed to say it, I was wrong. All of it. The suspicion, the anger, the words I threw at you when you didn't deserve any of them. You were loyal, and I was too blind to see it." Her eyes flickered, a storm of emotions flashing across them, hurt, sorrow, and something like release. "Elias. I stopped hating you a while ago, she said. But I can't go back there. You took something from me that I can't rebuild, trust. And without it, love just doesn't survive. He nodded. For the first time, he didn't argue. He didn't reach out or make promises. He simply stood there, letting the truth sink into his bones. Then, as if to seal it, Mara added quietly, "You've changed. I can see that. And I'm glad. Just promise me, don't let who you were destroy who you're becoming." Elias swallowed hard, the words carving something deep inside him. "I promise." He turned and walked away, each step heavy but freeing. The rain washed over him, cleansing him of everything he had been, the anger, the control, the fear of losing her. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running after something that didn't belong to him anymore. Inside the house, Mara watched him go. She didn't cry this time. The pain had settled into something gentler, acceptance. She whispered a quiet goodbye that he didn't hear, but maybe, somehow, he felt it. As Elias reached his car, he looked back one last time. The house was just a blur through the rain, but he smiled faintly. He had finally done the one thing love had always asked of him, let go. A year had passed. The seasons had turned and turned again, and life, in its quiet, indifferent rhythm, had moved on. Elias now lived in a small town upstate, far from the noise, far from the ghosts of who he used to be. His house was modest, filled with books, sketches, and plants that somehow managed to survive his inconsistent care. He had become someone different, not reborn, not cleansed, but honest. Every scar inside him had stopped bleeding and started teaching. He volunteered at a local youth center, helping young men talk about things he once buried: jealousy, insecurity, fear of being unworthy. When one of them said, "I'm scared she'll leave me," Elias would smile sadly and answer, "If she does, don't let that fear turn you into someone you'll regret." Sometimes, on quiet mornings, he'd still think of Mara. Not with longing or guilt, but with gratitude. She had been the mirror that showed him everything he needed to face. Losing her had been the end of their story, but the beginning of his truth. One morning, he received a letter, simple, unadorned, addressed in handwriting he could never mistake. Mara. He hesitated before opening it. Inside, her words were brief but heavy with grace. Elias. I heard from someone that you're doing good things. I'm glad. I wanted you to know that I'm happy too, in a way I didn't think I could be again. I'm getting married next spring. His name is Daniel. He's kind, patient, and safe. I think you'd like him. I hope you found peace. M. Elias sat for a long time after reading it. There was no pain this time, no ache. Just a quiet acceptance that love, real love, doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes, it means letting each other find the right world to belong to. That evening, he walked down to the lake near his house. The sunset painted the sky in gold and violet, the same colors he once saw reflected in Mara's eyes. He took a deep breath and whispered, "Thank you." Not to her, not to the past, but to the version of himself who had survived it. The wind rustled through the trees, soft and forgiving. He smiled, faintly but sincerely, as he turned back toward home. For the first time in years, Elias didn't feel like a man haunted by what he'd lost. He felt like someone who had finally learned how to love, quietly, without possession, without fear. And that, perhaps, was the truest kind of redemption.